So, with that, hi everybody. Good morning and welcome to our MooreChat. My name is Mallory Buckley and I work in Walter P. Moore's diagnostics group here in Dallas. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Jackie Byndas Prakhov, one of our engineers also in the diagnostics group here in Dallas. Jackie is native to New Mexico, but now resides in Dallas with her husband and her dog, Lily. Jackie specializes in enclosure systems and has worked on many notable projects across the Metroplex, including the Meyerson Symphony Center and Hall of State at Fair Park. Today, Jackie is going to share with us her experience with commercial fenestration systems. So, Jackie, with that, take it away.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Mallory. So today I'm going to discuss the differences between three primary types of fenestration systems that we see in commercial construction. And those are going to be storefront systems, window wall systems, and curtain wall systems. So the first system I'm going to talk about the construction method, and then the detailing is the storefront system. So storefront systems, to begin constructing them and installing them, you actually attach both the horizontal and vertical mullions to form the frame. You install then the sill pan at the bottom of the storefront system with the end dams on either side. After that, the frame gets moved into place. A key component here is you see that back dam, that upturned leg of the L shape of the sill pan. The perimeter sealant is then installed for the storefront system. The glazing gets installed into the frame, and then the glazing stop and exterior gaskets get installed. So storefront systems are exactly what you think of when you go shopping at an outlet mall, or perhaps, window shopping. You're going to see these systems typically installed in those types of applications. And typically a storefront, you can tell because it's contained to the first floor, but can span up to 2 stories. But it usually does not go past that. Now I want to talk about the detailing of a storefront system and how water is managed and how the air barrier functions in a storefront system, particularly at the interface of adjacent cladding. So here you can see that we have a head condition of a storefront system. This is an exterior glaze system. You can tell by the glazing stop on the exterior cladding side. And what we have is we need to make sure that the air barrier / water resistive barrier is wrapped into the rough opening to the interior side of the mullion. So what that does, as you can see, is you then have the ability to positively lap over your metal flashing and allow water to drain from behind your cladding without migrating to the interior. But perhaps the most important aspect for your air barrier continuity is going to be this interior seal. So the interior seal is actually provides your plane of air tightness, which we're going to see right here by the purple dashed line. So not only do you need to ensure that the system drains out properly, but your air water resistive barrier needs to be continuous to that interior sealant to provide a plane of air tightness. Next, I'm going to talk about how this differs from window wall construction. So unlike storefront, that's typically on the first level, spans possibly 1 to 2 stories, window wall construction is installed between slabs, and it only spans 1 story. It can mimic the look of a curtain wall, but it's going to be different because it actually rests on the slab instead of being outboard. It can mimic it because you can install some slab covers or provide architectural features that make it look more continuous. So I really like this picture on the right-hand side that shows those window walls being installed, and then you have an air barrier component installed at each slab edge. So looking at the detailing of these interfaces, you really are going to be considering similar detailing to a storefront system. So the primary drainage mechanism is on the outside. They drain from the weep holes. There should be a flashing installed under as part of the system to direct the water outboard. And similar to your storefront, you're going to have your interior air seals at the interior side of the mullions. So you can provide your plane of air tightness. So at this point, the concrete does become part of the air barrier, but to prevent capillary action through the concrete, we do recommend that you install an air barrier product at this location. Some other important aspects to note is that the slab cover, there is a weep provided at the bottom for drainage as well. So next I'm going to talk about curtain wall systems. And when it comes to curtain wall systems, there are really two different systems that are considered. You can have stick-built systems that are very cost-effective for unique geometry. So if you have a sloped facade or a changing angle of slope, you're typically going to use a stick system, and they are also often used in locations where construction labor is cheaper, since the system is built on site at the job. Unitized systems, on the other hand, are done in a factory, and the seals are applied in the factory. And then as the units are shipped to site, they can be installed kind of like a puzzle, and it allows for faster installation, as well as better quality control, since the critical seals are applied in a manufactured facility and they can test them there. So I'm going to talk a bit about the interface detailing for a curtain wall and how that really differs from a storefront or a window wall construction. So curtain walls, the first thing you need to know is they are typically outboard of the slab. So unlike the window wall or storefront that sit on the slab, the curtain walls are usually anchored outboard of the slab. The second thing you need to know about interface detailing is curtain walls have two exterior sealants and one interior sealant. So unlike your storefront and your window wall systems that you're going to have your air barrier tied in at the back of the mullion, your air water resistive barrier for your curtain wall still needs to wrap the rough opening and positively lap your head flashing with a second layer, but you're really looking at these two seals on the exterior. The outboard seal is going to be your water management seal, so that is going to deteriorate over time, and it's going to prevent any wind-driven moisture from entering the system. But your air seal for air continuity is right there at the shoulder of the glazing pocket, and that is your second seal from the outside. So your plane of air tightness is actually going to go through to your second seal and then through the glazing pocket. It is critical to also positively lap your head flashing at these locations to ensure that water is being directed out of the system. So to elaborate on these differences, I have a little diagram here to show how these different systems are anchored. So window walls, again, to summarize, they're single story. You have a dead load anchor and a wind load anchor, typically dead loaded on the slab, and then the wind load anchor is on the top. And we have a cool little animation that shows that right there with the window wall. For a stick belt curtain wall system, you're usually going to have a dead load anchor, a wind load anchor, and a splice joint. And as you can see in the little animation, we do have them outboard of the slab, so that is a primary difference. And it moves differently. So it will usually dead load off of the 2 stories at a time, and then have a wind load anchor there for lateral support. The unitized curtain wall, on the other hand, is usually single story span, and it cantilevers from above. You can see the different dead load and stack joints for each system. And the picture on the other slide where they were installing it, you can see level by level. So they move differently than the stick-built system. So that concludes my brief presentation on the differences between commercial fenestration systems. If you have any questions now, I'd be glad to take them.
Jackie, thank you for presenting. One of the questions that I had just watching your presentation, what is the most common detailing issue that you come across for fenestration systems, particularly in the design phase?
So in the design phase, a lot of times I will review architectural details, and the 2 most common mistakes that I can see are that the air water resistive barrier does not connect to the air seal, and then also the head flashing is not positively lapped. So instead of water being directed out in front of the head flashing, you have a seam where they're reverse lapped and can possibly be a point of vulnerability.
Thanks, Jackie. Looks like we have questions from Chris DeRosa, if you want to ask.
Great, thanks. Great presentation, Jackie. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit about the benefits of window walls versus curtain walls.
Absolutely. So window walls are typically going to be shorter depths. The mullions are going to be a shorter depth, so they're not going to take up as much space. Or I'm sorry, that's versus storefront. So for curtain walls, the window wall is typically less expensive and can mimic the curtain wall appearance if detailed properly or have an aesthetic cover plate over the edge of the slab. And that can be a real cost savings to the owner. But if you're getting to high-rise buildings and you want that continuous facade look, that may not be the best option. So it really depends on the project, but window walls can provide the same aesthetic or a similar aesthetic for a low cost.
Hey, Jackie, this is Faith. I have a question also about window walls. So in a window wall system, can the concrete act as the air barrier as well?
So the concrete can act as the that may be trapped there, it is recommended to add some sort of membrane at that location so that you can, get it wicked away from the concrete to prevent it from migrating.
Jackie, I had a question as well. Do certain areas of the country favor stick-built or unitized curtain wall systems?
That's a great question. So typically, as I said, in areas where labor costs are cheaper, they may go for a stick-built system. Just due to that fact, but unitized systems are definitely favored on the West Coast or in seismic zones just because of the way they can accommodate movement. That's a great question.
Hey, Jackie, thanks for the presentation. I had a question about construction issues. What would you say are the most common construction issues you've come across for the 3 fenestration systems you went over?
That's a great question. Thanks so much. So for storefronts, I would definitely say that the end dams. So you have your sill pan in your storefront systems that your frame sits on, and then your end dams are at exactly how it sounds, each end. What needs to happen is those end dams need to be sealed to the rough opening, or they need to be positively lapped with the membrane product that is wrapping the rough opening, because otherwise any water that comes in that joint, that perimeter seal, and migrates downward is just going to bypass the storefront system and possibly migrate to the interior. So for storefront systems, I would definitely say that is the number one installation issue that I see. For curtain walls and for store or window walls are typically pre-manufactured in before they get shipped to site. So the installation guidelines, it's more of how the air barrier gets connected to the framing and having that continuity. So without that continuity, you're going to have air leakage into your building, and ensuring that the seals are in the right place are definitely the most common issues in construction for window walls and curtain wall systems.
Give another 2 or 3 seconds if there's any more questions. In the meantime, I just want to remind everybody that on August 11th, Chris DeRosa with Walter P. Moore out of our DC office will be discussing re-roofing at the Toronto's Rogers Center, which is home of the Blue Jays MLB team. Then we'll have a short break in August, and we'll be back in September with Annie Lowe, who will be looking at waterproofing. So if there's no more questions, I just want to say thank you, Jackie, for the presentation. It was really informative and we learned a lot. Thank you for everybody that was here and participating. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out to Jackie. And if not, we will see you for our next MooreChat on August 11th. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.